Hello, Utkarsh. Welcome to
Yes, sir.
Spark Education Services once again. Right, you are with us long time back. Right, you are a student of Spark Education Services, and then you then did your MBA from SP Jain Finance. So, in this sort of a series of various interviews, I'm going to conduct. Life at B school and life after B school, various challenges, opportunities that you have exploited at B school. This is what I wanted to discuss with various Spark students and even students other than Spark as well. Okay, so here is with me Utkarsh. He did his MBA from SP Jain, one of the top B schools in India, SP Jain Finance. Earlier, he was with TCS, and before TCS, he did his engineering from VIT Vellore, and currently he is with Swiggy manager ad revenue. Right, Utkarsh?
Great, sir.
Okay, so Utkarsh, thank you very much for joining. All right, so let's start. Um, First of all, let me ask. I think everything is fine with you, right? You are
Yes, sir.
safe, right?
I hope the same for you, sir. I hope the same for you.
Yes,
And Spark, of course.
I'm good too. Thank you very much, right? Because this is one of the toughest periods that we are going through currently.
Right, sir. Right.
Okay, so let me begin with this question that you did IT, right? IT
Right, sir.
engineering, right? You did
Yeah, yeah.
engineering, right? Then and you had worked with finance. Then how difficult was for you to convert this call, SPGen Finance? Because SPGen has a typical way of conducting interviews.
Correct.
So
Correct.
they make you select the specialization at the form filling itself, right?
Right, sir.
So when you fill in the form, you had chosen finance. So
Right,
in
sir.
general, my question is when you have chosen a specialization different from what your background is, what happens? How difficult is cracking the interview?
Okay. Right, sir. So first of all, thanks a lot for welcoming me back. It's always a pleasure to be associated with Spark because when I was back there in 2 years back when I was Spark, that's exactly what led me to SPGN interview as well. I think so. So yeah, and just to answer your question, yes. So what you mentioned, that's exactly what I faced in my case as well. Because having a diverse kind of a background coming from an engineering and then doing my working with TCS and then opting for finance because that is what I wanted to pursue as a specialization in any of the MBA colleges I aspired for. So what happened there, like you mentioned, that the process is a little bit different here. So first of all, I got a profile call. It wasn't based on just my CAT score. It was a profile-based call. How the process works is it's a group kind of an interview where they will probably have different students in a sort of a panel, which might be a mix of finance, marketing, and other specs, or it could be all finance. Any sort of a random sort of arrangement can be present there. So coming from a background where I did not have a lot of knowledge about finance itself, but I wanted to pursue it, I think at one point it is very important to understand that the colleges which are going to interview, they probably already know this, that you might not have a lot of background in this, but they would probably expect you to know basics about it. So that's what I focused on, that whenever you are when you are trying to pursue MBA, your aim or your main goal is to become one of the best managers out there, right? So you need to start it from a business, you need to start thinking from a business perspective. So what I largely focused on was on the economics, like whatever was happening right then back in 2018 with respect to all the demonetization and inflation and all the different sort of economic terminologies which were there in picture at that moment. So I sort of updated myself with all those general sort of a knowledge in terms of basically how India is driving as an economy, what are the drawbacks in that case. So that's the best thing I thought I should prepare for, because any other case the interviewer would recognize that I might not know everything about finance in detail. So first of all, you need to be very well versed with what you are trying to achieve here, because you are going to study for a business role. It's not something which is, they won't drill you on finance directly, right? So that's what my idea was. So when I sat in an interview, whenever they would ask me a question, I was honest about it if I knew the answer or not. And whatever I knew, I tried to just articulate it in a manner which seemed like that it was well enough prepared in that sense. So that's exactly what worked for me. Nothing, because I did not have a background specifically, I obviously did not have anything to flaunt about it. Because if they would ask me something about debt or equity, I might know exactly what that would mean at that moment, right? So I prepared everything on my basics, what my strong strengths were. So that's exactly what helped me get through the first round of interviews. And SP, as you know, for the second round interview, they are very they basically try to test the ethical values of the candidate, right? So that was something I was very much comfortable with, because I have my own principles with which I work on, and that is something which helped me a lot. So I talked from my experience, I talked a lot about sports, which I love pursuing as well as watching. So that is something which worked for me in that space. So yes, that's what I would advise, that you should always focus on strength, and always keep this in mind, that the interviewer is also someone who would be aware that you might not have a background for it, but then they're not basically assessing you on that. They're assessing you what kind of individual you are, and how what kind of a value basically you can add to the organization if you come to this XYZ college. That's what I felt that went well in my interview.
Right, great. But I would like to. I'm now a bit curious. What
Sure.
made you choose finance? You know, you did IT and then TCS. How long you were with TCS? If I
I
may
think
ask.
23 months, roughly 23 months.
23 months, and even then
Right.
you chose finance, not information management system. So what made you choose finance?
Right. So basically, whenever I was there, during my stint at TCS itself, so I was involved with a lot of client meetings where we would have out of India clients, and I would get on those calls trying to understand what basic requirements they have. So in the process itself, they would talk about a lot of different aspects, which was somewhat confusing to me, because it was more related to business. The first idea was business, so that's where I
So,
got my.
so let me interrupt a bit. So were they related to finance, from finance
No,
domain?
so yeah, no. So the client which I was working for, they were not related in finance, but in terms of cost optimization, they would always talk about where you can find the right, where is the right way to get the cost optimized. So they would mention a lot of things related to business, and then they would also
Okay.
talk about some of the terminologies of finance. Like they would mention that what would be the payables for them, or the receivables for them. But for me as an engineer, I did not have any clue regarding it. So I would always go back and just Google about what they're basically trying to talk about in order to understand better what they're trying to achieve out there. So that's something which got me interested into this area first of all. So I started looking into what exactly a company talks in terms of their balance sheet or a P&L. So that is something which basically attracted me. So I thought that was obviously one aspect. And from in my personal life as well, I was always trying to get inspired with how does the stock market works and everything. But I would still say a lot of people out there who may not have a major in finance or may not have an interest in finance, they still basically practice stock market. And how does mechanism work? So
Right.
I don't think that would be the right factor to basically indicate that you have an interest in it. But yes, the
Okay.
other factors, when there would be a lot of interaction with clients, etc., that's what basically got me interested in it and motivated in it. So
Okay.
that was the starting point, I would say.
Okay, wonderful. You know, so it's good that you made it clear that many
Yeah,
people these days, do a lot of dabbling in the stock market, and
correct.
they think that they should take the finance, but that could not
No,
be
no,
the whole reason,
exactly.
because in an average, individual these days needs to be interested in the stock market, but that
Correct.
is not enough to choose a career in finance.
That's
Am I
exactly
right?
what I meant.
Okay.
Right.
So how difficult for you to cope with, in at SP Jain, you had IT engineering, right?
Yes.
And then you took finance. So this
Right.
particular transition, was it easy or was it difficult? Was it challenging? And at SP Jain, how many, in your batch, particularly finance batch, how many students were from non-finance background? I mean, can you give a rough picture, rough idea of it?
Okay. So right. So first of all, I would like to start with the latter part of the question. So I think out of 60 people that were there, probably 35 to 40% would be non-engineer, would be
Non-finance.
non-commerce or a CA, basically. Yeah. So from my engineering background, I know any other diverse background. So that would be the rough figure, right?
Around
But
50%, you can say 50%.
yeah, 40 to
Rough
50%,
40,
definitely.
50%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then to answer the first part of the question, so SP Gen, the curriculum which they have devised, I mean, so first of all, when you are entering into the college, you are already aware what specialization you are getting into, right? So if you already have an interest, you would do some sort of a basic primary research on it, like how does the course look like, what would basically you would need to equip yourself with in order to get at least a 30 or a 40% level of what a commerce student or a CA would already have learned in their entire period of the in their entire education, right? So the first part of it was basically that they made us take a test while you're getting into the college, and that was something which had a clear Harvard module on three different aspects. So one of them was finance purely. So they already made it sure that when you're getting, so they are sort of leveling the field for you. Even as a non-engineer, you would be aware of a lot of accounting terms which basically you need to be well versed with when you're getting, at least in the first year, right? So that would talk about a lot of gap accounting tools, what are the basic terminologies in a balance sheet, how to make that tally, the ledger balance, everything. It was there, it was mentioned, and quite in detail. And then they would basically test you on that. So that was something which basically got me well versed with what sort of the curriculum which is coming into
So
for me.
just a minute. So is this test mandatory for everyone, even for those
Yes,
who have done BComs and CS? Okay.
Yes, it is mandatory for everyone. So probably for
That's
a
what I'm
BCom or a
asking.
CA,
So you are supposed to compete with these people who already well versed with
that's
accounting and everything, right? So how did you
right.
manage? How did you cope with that particular stress
So
in case if you
yeah,
face?
so the first part was this. That was something which was there, that you have to self-study and basically get in term with it. But that was not the end of it. That was just like the first milestone which you were to achieve. So here I would basically like to call out what the SP Jain culture looks like. So when I got into the college, what I realized was that SP Jain does not focus a lot on the CGPA. You can basically maintain your CGPA and everything. You can be good at academics as well as balance every other extracurricular activity. But CGPA is not a criteria which is basically mentioned on your on your resume while you are getting shortlisted for the jobs. So when this was made clear that CGPA is not the criteria for your shortlisting for any other
Okay.
placement activity that might happen, the sort of environment was very, very conducive, where everybody would basically come out and offer to help you, because there is no
Great.
metric that they would want to achieve that competitive advantage over you in terms of CGPA. So that is something which was completely abolished. So I could any day just approach a CA or a commerce background student and then ask him, can you please help me with this concept? That is not something which I can understand it. And they will basically accommodate you so very well, because they already know that you are an engineer or from a non-finance background. So they would basically try to start at the basic level. And that's how the peer-to-peer bonding also increases for you. So that is
Does that
something.
because you were lucky enough to get those kind of friends, or
No, that's what. So,
or is
so
that the
here is the
Espigen culture that
no, that
makes?
is the culture. That is the culture. So, because the batch size is also 240, and in the first year, if you think about it, in the first year, only 50% of that 60 people, that is 30 people, are the only one in the college out of the batch of 240 who would basically know something about finance, because they are either commerce or a CA. But then apart from that, the entire batch who are basically into marketing or information management or operations, they also have to take finance 101 in their first year.
Oh,
But
I
they are
see.
also at a similar level as the engineers, right, who are into finance as well. But for the other, so these 210 people who are out of this equation, all of them basically want to learn the same thing. And there's only this 30 group of people who is already aware about it. So apart from whatever you're learning in class, you will always need to go back to them and ask them, can you please help me with this something? So that's the kind of a culture which was created, that every CA would have like 20, 30 people inside their circle. Might be a friend, might not be a friend. You can just
Right.
approach anybody and they would offer to help you. So that's the kind of a culture. But I think I believe that is something which is the strength of SP, because they do not have this criteria that you need to have that competitive advantage in terms of a CGPA as a shortlisting criteria for your placement. So that is where that border or the line vanishes, and everybody is approachable in that sense. So that
Okay.
is something I really liked about it.
Correct. So, here I would like to ask a question. So many times I have heard from students from other B schools that you have to be one of the top, toppers in your class, especially in the finance domain, to get the best of the placement that is available in the B school. So, to what extent you agree with this, that you really have to be, academically extremely strong at at the particular B school, or especially at SPGN? And you are saying that the culture of SPGN is different.
Yeah.
CGPA doesn't matter that much. So
Right.
so then what really matters? I mean, many
So
many people are really finally interested in
right,
this
right.
particular aspect.
So
The bottom line, what we can say in the
right.
financial words, right? Yeah.
So see, all obviously having already said that CGPA is not a criteria for shortlisting, there are a lot of other factors which definitely play a role while getting the shortlist for the companies, right? So apart from that, if you are an achiever in the college, like there's something called as a Dean's Top 20 in SPJ. So if you are a part of a top 20 in the batch, you will basically get that merit hold that you're a Dean's Top 20. And for the top 30, they're called as Dean's Merit List people. So that is something which is sort of an equivalent, but then that's only applicable to those 30 people in the batch. So they will have that extra distinction in their own resume where they would have they can mention that they're a DTT or a DML in that sense. So that is of course something academics
And
does
that
help.
is basically on academics.
That's on academics. That's on CGPA only, but that's only for all those 30 people. Out of that, there is no CGPA mentioning in the resume at all. So nobody would basically understand whether they would basically gauge you what kind of a candidate you are in the interviews itself, or what have you done apart from academics on that, right? So if you have a DTT or a DML, that might help you definitely get a shortlist to some extent, of course, I would say. And in finance, it does matter because I think it's a competitive field, and people always try to the companies always try to shortlist candidates who have some sort of a distinction in academics specifically. So yes, I would say that is something which is there, but that I would say that would influence only till the shortlisting. While in an interview, you can always showcase what kind of a strength you have. So even
Right.
being an engineer, you can always try to say that what have you learned from through the projects. You can explain your knowledge. You can explain everything what you have basically sort of learned in your majors, and that is another benefit of SPGen, because we do not have a summers interview. We have an autumns
Okay.
kind of interview. So
Okay.
by what I mean is that all the other colleges in India, what they basically have is that so the first years when they get into the college, so they would basically start their course by June, and by October they will have to sit for the placements for their summers, which will happen in April, right? April of next year. For us, how it happens is we have to go through the entire first year and the first semester of second year as well. And then when we sit for autumn's placement. So basically, we are already well versed with what is our majors, right? So we are already aware of all the corporate valuation, etc., which we have to take as a course. So just talking about finance, that you have already taken it as a course, so that this field is again leveled for you. That big, whatever advantage a CA or a non-com or a commerce student might have, that's something which you can also learn. Obviously, the time span is short for you, but you can definitely make an effort to learn it and at least get to 60-70% of their level, if not say 100%, right? But then the field is again level, because in an interview, if an interviewer would ask you how would you value XYZ company, even you are capable of doing that now, having already gone through that course itself. So then it becomes a question of how well basically you have learned and through your entire program, and how well are you able to execute it in terms of explanation while in an interview, of course. So then it becomes sort of a level playing field for you. So that is
Most,
something which is
yeah,
also, yeah,
correct. Most B schools have placement committees run by students. So does
correct.
SPJN have a similar one?
Yes, we do.
How much is it important to part of that placement committee to get a good placement? So let me ask you a very
Yes.
blunt question.
Correct, right.
Right.
So no, yeah, but then again, I would say that here also there is something which is very different than any other college. So if you would talk about any other legacy IMs or the other IMs which are there, they would basically have their juniors who would select. They would basically have the juniors as a panel who would basically place the current batch, right? For us, it does not work like that. We as a batch would basically elect people from our own batch of 240 to basically represent us in the placement committee. So here the question is, whenever you are electing a candidate who has already applied for getting into the placement committee, you need to first understand that individual very well, because here the placement committee, whenever whosoever wants to get into the placement committee, their objective is very clear, that it's not a primary objective, but they have to think for the batch first. Because if the other person who are electing you are not thinking that, then basically they would never elect you. So they would always first and foremost think about the batch, and then basically think about their own placement, because it's the same group of 240 people. So when you're interesting of something which is something like a placement of your own batchmates, you would obviously need to put your batchmates needs first in order to get into that committee. So I think whosoever applies for that particular placement committee role, they're already clear in mind that this is something that they have to do. Because otherwise, if you're not doing a stellar job in there, obviously everybody will be able to understand, and the blame, it's very easy to put the blame on your own batchmate, right? Because you can clearly see who he is interacting with, who is basically favoring in a placement process itself. So I would say that is something which is very, very true and honest of the placement committee members who basically want to get into this committee, right? They would obviously place the batch's interest first, and then they would think about themselves. Yes, of course, from a student perspective, this is true. From a company perspective, it definitely does add that laurel again to your CV if you have a placement committee on your resume, because the company might think that this person is definitely capable of carrying out that process. And especially if our own alums are there in an interview process, they would definitely know what a placement committee member would have gone through while getting those companies here, and what sort of a capability he or she has while interacting with any other stakeholders, right? So that is something which they might think as an added advantage, and they can definitely get an extra shortlist or extra couple of shortlists. So yes, it does have value. But then from the student's perspective, when you're getting into the placement committee, you need to be completely selfless. Otherwise, it just does not work.
All right. Tell me, see, so SPJ must be having a lot of activities
Right.
being conducted, right? So how important it is to participate in those activities? Or in general, what I would like to ask is, there's that, what should we do, okay, once you enter a B school? How it is important to exploit the other opportunities other than your curriculum, right? How important it is to exploit them.
Okay. So as I've already mentioned, that because academics is something which is not right on the foremost criteria, because of that CGPA relaxation, people do indulge in a lot of extracurricular activities. So right from stepping into the B school, whenever you would start your year at the college, the first year, a lot of companies would start coming in, and there is basically this business school level competitions which happen. So it can be a corporate competition as well as other B schools having their own competition in terms of the fest which they conduct, right? So there are these two levels of business school level competition which happens. One would be a corporate, where a company would come and basically present a sort of a case study in which you can participate, and whosoever has the best solution probably wins the first prize or second prize. It works like that. But that is not specific to SP Jain. That would be specific to all the B schools in India, basically. So you would compete against the best against IMA, BC, and every other college out there, right? So that is something which definitely hone your skills in terms of how you are approaching a problem. So suppose, for example, if somebody is very much inclined into a consulting kind of a job, they would basically definitely want to take up activities like getting into a beat school competition, which involves a lot of case study, where you need to find the primary, where basically you are supposed to do the primary research and the secondary research and come up with a sort of a solutioning, right? So that is something which basically company also utilize in their real time, problem, because the question or the problem statement which the companies give in their corporate events or the visual competition is actually live. It's not something which is made out of a book. The company might be facing that problem, and they would just put it out there as a competition in a competition format. So B school competition is definitely one which everybody gets into, and definitely they should try at least one or two to understand if that is their cup of tea, whether to gain that extra competitive knowledge and advantage or not. That's something definitely as one. Apart from B school competition, etc., there are a lot of other activities which are happening on campus. So the main idea, I think what worked for me the most in the college was because of academic relaxation, or in the sense because of just trying to maintain my good GPA apart and getting that extra time in order to get my own personality development. I was basically involved with a lot of different committees as well. So I wanted to basically understand how a committee would work. So I was part of the alumni relations and the committee in the college. So I was basically able to carry forward those committee level tasks as well. Get that another 20 people group of people whom you have never interacted with, and you would be part of that team. So that basically helps you understand, that basically helps in peer learning as well, and you get a lot of other sort of personality development skills which you can, a team skill or any sort of extracurricular skill which you can gain out of there. So committee is one thing, then your B school competition is what I've outlined. Then apart from that, the curriculum itself, apart from academics, SP Jain does have a lot of non-classroom learning courses, so to say. So we have something called as a personal growth lab, where in the first year of the college itself, you are taken to a 4-day tour or to Lonavala or anywhere around Mumbai, where the whole batch of 240 people would go, and there will be a lot of fun activities like a trekking or any sort of activities which is involved in that. So that's basically just to prompt your own personal growth. Then we would have we also have a curriculum like Abhyudaya, where you are supposed to take a class 6 to between a class 6 to 12 student. You are supposed to take a kid, an underprivileged kid under yourself, and basically for 1 year you are the guardian or the parent. You are supposed to help them with everything, like in terms of how to give them a direction for the future. So it just basically teaches you the other aspects of learning as an individual, which might not be beneficial in a industry or a working sort of environment, but will definitely hone you as a person.
All right. So after listening to so many activities at SP Jain, now a curious question that has come to my mind is this: that I think then, online MBA is worthless. What do you think? You cannot really participate in such activities with a lot of enthusiasm, and online MBAs have been there, but recently even offline has become online. Okay, so a few students are even kind of postponing their decision of doing an MBA because they think that online MBA, apart from obviously if it is one of the top B schools in India like SP Jain, IIMs, etc. So even online MBA will add value in terms of getting a better placement. But if you look at other B schools which do not come in the league of IIMs and SP Jain, etc. So they think that online MBA is not useful. So what do you think? What is your take on it?
Okay, so yes, definitely what you mentioned, as I also mentioned and you also said, it's very difficult to get that sort of a bonding which you want when you are in an offline kind of environment or an online kind of environment. Because of course you can definitely get on the Zoom calls and you are able to conduct that. You can still participate in all those B school competitions, etc. Because that's something similar to what a work environment is like, right? But in terms of getting that personal touch with respect to in terms of the personal bonding or a peer-to-peer learning growth is something which definitely misses out of the equation. So yes, for a college like SP Jain, there are definitely some sort of a drawback in this sense, because you won't be able to get the complete benefit of what an SP Jain is offering you in an offline kind of an environment, because the kind of individuals they want you to be out when you graduate from the college it definitely includes an aspect of being a better manager, but also a better individual or human being in general. So they want to definitely tap your grounded sort of that grounded quality in each and every candidate which they have in their college. So that is something which would be difficult to do when you are in an online kind of environment. But yes, in terms like what you said, definitely for a placement jump or from in a career, if you want to get a financial jump in terms of from not doing an MBA to an MBA, that's definitely still there. You're able to learn and grow, but yes, definitely there is to some limitations. Extent. There are some limitations.
Correct. So now I would like to ask, whenever I take interviews of call getters, and they say that I want to finance, and then one very fashionable word they utter, and that word is investment banking. So I want to do investment banking, and therefore I want to MBA finance. Now tell me, is it really easy to get into investment banking, even from the colleges like SP Jain or be it IIM Bangalore or let's say FMS? What do you think? How difficult is to get that kind of what you can say highly fashionable and lucrative kind of careers in finance?
Right. So yes, you're absolutely right about it. So definitely, when you are thinking about getting into an investment kind of a role, first of all, the sort of the shortlisting criteria which they have in their heads, the companies, it's already pretty much clear in their head that they want somebody who is very strong in finance, right? So yes, definitely, it does come as a little bit of a it does become a little bit of a problematic for a person who is not from a finance or not from a finance kind of a background, like an engineer. But then that's not to say that you cannot achieve it. the task just becomes a little bit difficult for you. And in order to get it, you need to have some sort of that extra laurel on your resume, which nobody has probably, because they would
Okay.
probably want to definitely look at what is that extra quality you are bringing in. Because as an investment banker, whenever you are starting, you would need to get into that analyst sort of a profile. You need to put that analyst cap and do and be comfortable with the numbers in and out again and again, right? For the first 3 years, you would need to put that a lot of effort into that sort of a profile, and probably after that is when you start reaping the benefits. Because uh, right now in our college, a lot of companies which are coming for investment banking profile, not all of them are offering the front end jobs, right?
Yes.
So if you are, so it's obviously it's also beneficial to start at a back end role, because then you know the ground reality, and that's where you are building yourself up from. So when you are achieving that position, you are definitely far better than probably somebody who might not have an experience as to how the ground reality would work, right? So to say, that is definitely a benefit. But yes, it's not an easy feat to get into a core finance kind of a job into an MBA college, even if you're graduating from a top ones. So if I
So
just
tell
if
me,
I
you said that extra laurel, or you said you need to have something. So does that something include some courses that are talked about these days? One of them is CFA or FRM. These certifications, are they really mandatory, or will they really help to get? You said back front end jobs difficult to get, but to
correct.
get it into those front end job, is it essential to do these certifications along with you are doing MBA finance or before you do MBA finance?
So I think, see, how the mechanism of getting into a company works, that is something which would be a sort of a sort of a hurdle here. So of course, a candidate who would be interested in investment banking might be a better candidate, or even the best out of the herd, when he's put into that interview position, and he's able to deliver, he's able to execute, he's able to explain each and everything which has been asked to it, and might kill the interview as well, right? But then to get into that interview room is something which is very difficult, for which I mentioned that you need to have that laurel. Because if you do not have something extra special on your CV, you might not get a shortlist itself, or might not get a shot itself to get into that interview room. So that is how it works, because they would obviously measure you with all your peers as well. So
Mhm.
here it might be something that a DTT or a DML might play a role, because they would definitely see somebody who is very much into academics. So something of this sort definitely works in the real environment as well, because it's I mean, I really don't know what companies think when they're shortlisting, but I would definitely assume that they would want to pick somebody who is extra special, right? So if you talk about courses like CFO or FRM, yes, definitely they would add an advantage, but then only to those specific kind of a job roles if you're aspiring for. So apart from, let's say, an investment banking, if you want to really get into a corporate finance role, I don't really think that this would be so mandatory to you. Of course, there would be that competitive advantage in a lot of things, because when you're preparing for it, you're definitely able to understand the concepts also better. So it's the learning curve is also a steep for you, and you're able to maybe better understand it than any other peer of yours. But then in terms of job profiles, some of the companies or some of the roles like IB might require it, but others may not. So it wouldn't be I don't think it would be mandatory to do it if you are not aspiring for a certain profile.
Okay. So tell me one thing that, I mean, many people want to do MBA finance, right?
Right.
But on what basis should they decide that they really are capable of doing a career in finance? I mean, what basis should they decide? Because the word finance for some people looks very alluring, but it may
Definitely.
not be that so. They may be good for, let's say, marketing. Some people have some experience. I mean, they don't have experience in finance at all. Like yours, you didn't have experience in finance at all. Some people have more than 3-4 years work experience in a non-finance industry, and they still want to do MBA finance. So, on what basis should I decide? Or is it advisable to these people who have got 4 years experience or 3 years experience in non-financial industry to go for MBA finance?
So, see, again, here I think again the process would also come into picture, because when you have already worked into a field like an IM or an operations for 3-4 years, you would definitely also start looking that whenever you would get an interview call, what would be your best shot at conversion, right? Because if you are doing a operation sort of a profile, you would need to have a very, very strong reason why you would want to pursue finance, because that is definitely what is going to come as an interviewer would definitely ask you that you already have worked in XYZ profile. Why really do you want to shift? So you need to have that definitely that clear answer in your head why you want to pursue. So I think first and foremost of the reason would be that interest needs to be there, right? But in order to showcase that, you would need to do something in order to showcase that how have you started already working towards that interest, because of which you want to pursue it in future as well, right? Because if you're in a room with an interviewer, they would definitely see merit. Okay, this person might be interested in finance. He might also be aware of a lot of terminologies which he's keeping himself updated with. But I can't really be sure that he would be a good fit for finance because he does not have any sort of an experience in there. He has a good prior experience with an operations kind of a profile, right? So I think you really need to be first of all clear in your head why would you want to pursue finance. That's number one. If it's something which gives you an advantage over a lot of other streams, which people do think is sort of a criteria because not everybody can learn finance, I don't really think that would be the reason. Because a lot of people, if you really pick up the book, even if you're not doing an MBA in finance, you can still learn it at your own, right? So it's nothing like that you want to do an MBA in finance to learn finance.
Yeah.
To some extent, of course, it is there. But then apart from that, if you really want to pursue your career in finance, then this might be the right way to go, because that would definitely give you that advantage over others, that because you are interested in it, you have even pursued the business angle from a finance sort of a lens, then definitely you might be a better fit than anybody else if you really want to pursue a sort of a financial role in future. So then I would think that's where the main decision comes into the picture. And obviously, even after that, it's not necessary that you do pursue your career in finance also. You can be a very good kind of a manager with having a finance knowledge, but also working into a different area, right? Because then you would have the measure of that you understand how this also works, and basically how would that impact your business decisions. So it obviously it definitely helps you in the long term. So I would suggest to anybody who would really want to, first of all, they should understand why they are interested in it and what are they doing in order to first get through that first door of into an MBA college to do finance. And then basically they should have a clear criteria that they want to pursue finance in XYZ sort of an industry. Then it would probably be clear to them. Or at least if you're not clear, then try your hands around. And then you would probably be able to understand much more better that if you are well suited for that sort of a profile or not. Might be it might be not your cup of tea, but you would never know it unless you practice it or try to get your hands on it, of course, like that.
Right. So, have you done any certifications, by the way?
No, so for personally, I did not, because I was much more involved in a different, in basically honing my own skills in terms of overall personality development. But something like a CFA or FRM, it takes a lot of time to prepare. So I felt that if I do input that time in there, I might be missing a lot of or on a lot of different things which the college has to offer as well. So personally, I felt that for me it was not required, at least at that moment. But anyways, if I would ever require it, I don't think I would shy away from pursuing it.
Do you think it is a risk to do an MBA finance from a B school which is just above average, which is not a great B school? Because it is difficult. I heard it is difficult to get good finance roles, even in backends, good to get up good opportunities. It is difficult to get off finance if that particular college does not have great financed, great placements. Off campus jobs in finance are difficult to get. This is what I've heard from some people. So should they take risk? Otherwise,
So,
off campus marketing jobs are not difficult to get. Off campus finance jobs and good finance roles are difficult to get into.
Okay, so first of all, I think the first question why they want to do finance would also depend on where they are. I mean, currently, at what stage of their life they are in currently. For example, if you talk about more freshers perspective, it might add value. But if you talk about from somebody who is already working for, let's say, 2-3 years, and they also have a decent paying sort of a salary or a kind of a compensation which they're looking for, and if you're doing it from any college which might not be top and might not add that extra compensation if you do graduate it from there, then probably it would be a sort of a question whether if it's kind of an opportunity, you'll have to measure the opportunity cost there. Because if you're
Okay.
not, if you're pursuing finance in there, but for that 2 years, you might have actually worked in your in your own role, or you would have basically grown into that and also attain that similar sort of a financial composition. So in terms of composition, I think that would be ruled out basis the opportunity cost. But if you really wish to pursue something specifically out of finance, like if you really want to do a IB kind of a role, or any investment or any capital investment roles, or if you're looking into equity research kind of a role, which you are not currently doing in your own profile of work as well, then it definitely adds some value, because MBA in finance is something which will definitely not just tell you about not just tell you about what are the things which you need to learn, but also how to execute it in real world. So that is something, is the additional value which you're looking for when you are pursuing it from a MBA college anywhere in India. So that's what I think.
Correct. So, right. So this would be the last question. Now there are many CAT aspirants who want to do well in the CAT exam, and since you had done very well in your CAT exam, so what pieces of advice would you like to give to them?
So first of all, I think a lot of that credit does go to Spark itself, because for the latter part of my preparation, I was involved with you and Dubey sir specifically, and that, I mean, the kind of discussion which we would have, not in terms of how to basically crack CAT, but in terms of how you can how you can become a better individual, is something which also aspires you, to get into that area, because you need to be in the clear space of mind on the exam day itself. So I think a lot of our discussion which we had was also how to be well placed in that sort of an environment, because a lot of CAT aspirants do think that acing the exam is the only criteria. But for me, I think it is also very important to be in that sort of the right space, because you might have the caliber, but may not have the great execution on that day. And then if you do not have it, then nothing counts, right? So I would suggest that if you are really aspiring to do CAT, always measure your strengths, of course, and then also think about how to place yourself in that environment. So if you are really practicing for mocks, etc., you should definitely keep that sort of a pressure environment for you while you are even given a mock exam, because that would basically make you very, very familiar when you're facing the real challenge, when there would be a sort of a 30 people in the same room in that similar slot hole of a computer right next to you on the left and right side of it. So for me, I think the most important part was to get into the right headspace, because I think everybody who's preparing for CAT would definitely have that caliber. In order to solve those questions, they do have that skills, they do have that practice, but everything which matters is the execution on the right day. So I think that is something which definitely I felt that is something which you and Dubey sir definitely helped me with, and that is a very, very critical criteria in order to crack the interview, in order to crack the exam itself.
Yes.
And for the preparation bit, I would really suggest that whatever Spark and any other preparation institute is doing, that would help, because they definitely train you about how to approach the examinations. So I think you would be the right or the better person
Yes,
in
I
order
know.
to educate
I know.
them.
Yes.
Yeah,
So I said that this was the last question, but one more question
sure.
I would like to ask. Since currently you are working with Swiggy,
Right.
so how is life at Swiggy? I know that it is online currently, but
Right.
I would like to know more about this current profession job that you are having now. The profile.
Yeah, so currently I'm working with Swiggy in the advertisement department, and it's basically my role is basically manager of ad revenues. So Swiggy basically has a lot of different revenue channels, and advertisement is one bit of it. So my role basically involves here in order to identify how basically you can increase the revenue from an X% to a Y percentage in terms of the contribution of advertisement revenue in there, right? So my work profile here is basically divided into so ad in general is divided into a supply and a demand side. So I basically belong to the supply side of ads, where I look after how to create more inventory on the platform in order to generate that extra revenue which we're looking for Swiggy in general. So it's a direct P&L impact kind of a growth profile, where whatever additional value which you're inputting, whatever extra inventory which you're generating on the platform, that would definitely translate into a XYZ paisa increment in the revenue itself at a per order level. So that's what I am basically doing.
I want to finish the interview, but a few more questions are coming. Zomato sure. IPO is coming.
Right, definitely.
So should I go for it?
No, I think, see, a lot of startups, especially in the food tech area, where Swiggy and Zomato, they are the best competitors out there. So I think because it's a kind of a duopoly market right now, I think both are definitely able to get that market share in general. And then, so whatever kind of opportunity which you can get in terms of IPO itself, I would definitely suggest that you should go for that IPO because it will be an added benefit. The industry right now in India is not that grown, and there are only two major competitors. So even while being from Swiggy, I wouldn't advise against getting a Zomato IPO because that's definitely going to do well in my own opinion as well. So, and when
Okay.
we are coming with it, I'm pretty sure that that's going to do even better. Of course.
Fantastic. Right from the first answer to the last one recurring theme in your answer that I can see, and is this that ultimately you should try to be a good individual. So
Right.
even while you are advising to go for Zomato IPO, I can see that you are trying to be a better and better individual, and that I think the what you can say, the message that the viewers of this interview should get at the end of this interview. Thank you very much for giving this interview to us. Okay, it
Sure, sir.
was wonderful interacting with you.
Definitely, sir. And what you said about being a better individual, that definitely I would owe completely to S P Jain because that is what they have taught me to become. Whatever you do in your own life, that is obviously some sort of a achievement. But then, if at the end of the day you're not a better individual, then basically you have never grown from where you have started from. That's what I
Right,
believe.
right.
That's my
and
point
and
of view. Yeah.
and the seed of a better individual probably was here at Spark to some
Definitely.
extent.
Yeah. Sure,
Okay.
of course. So whenever you would start practicing, preparing for the right kind of an exam with the right set of individuals, then only you will be able to understand what is there, like out of that vastness, where exactly is the right target for you. So definitely it did start at Spark, where I would interact with Dubes around a lot of philosophical
I know,
topics,
I
where
know,
he
I
would
know.
basically advise us and tell us how you should be always aspiring for greatness, and like obviously success will follow it.
Correct. Thank you very much. So let's stop here. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you once
Thank you
again.
so much, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.